Mackenzie.
Lamar.
It's a classy affair today. We're covering
Yeah.
Elizabeth with Cate Blanchett. We're doing an entire Cate
Hmm.
Blanchett month. We'll talk more about that post intro here. But this was kind of a breakout role for her. She'd only been in the biz for about 4 years, had done a handful of movies, and Oscar nom 4 years in. That's pretty
Hmm.
impressive. And it got me thinking of like we're around the same age, or 80s babies, but it's weird when I go watch films and I see actors. I was watching movies in the 90s and aughts of actors who had been doing it for decades. I'm thinking of the Gene Hackmans of the world, the Robert Duvalls, the Judy Denches. When I'm seeing them in my 20s and 30s, I'm seeing them
You're
decades into their career.
right.
And then you go back, and thanks to this podcast, I've watched a lot of their older stuff. But that got me thinking of the people that we've kind of grown up with, like people we saw their first handful of films when we were teenagers or even kids.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Mm-hmm.
have one of those that's still kind of in the biz today, and now we're seeing them, go into their golden years, and they're still making great stuff? You have a favorite that's still stuck around from the 90s or 80s?
Huh. Yeah, I mean, ones that we like grow up with kind of. So like there's a few that pop into my head, but a lot of them, to be honest, are even older than my generation. So
Uh-huh.
if I'm thinking more like that started around my generation, I think it's probably because we're already talking about a Kate, but Kate Winslet is
Oh,
a
okay.
big because I mean, if you think about it, she had several like little things, but Titanic's a blow up for her,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and then she does all kinds of other things. She's still going strong, and she's doing some like really incredible work both on stage and in film, and then now in TV. She's like busted it out in some.
Was she
She's
Mayor
from
of Easttown? Was that Kate
Yes, I was just
Winslet?
about to
Okay,
say
I
she's
haven't seen
Mayor
it,
of
but okay.
Easttown. No, it's very good. She
Okay.
was in Mayor of Easttown. She did this really great Mildred Pierce short limited series, which is based on a novel that is a really good novel. And it was a really good adaptation that I think also was on HBO.
Okay.
So yeah, she's like doing a lot of really cool creative stuff. And I just love her earlier stuff as well. And we've of course talked about Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think she's awesome and she picks great work. And she has this one that's so random, but I'll drop it here is The Dressmaker, and
Okay.
she's supposed to be an Australian like small town girl who has left to the big city, become this incredible dress designer,
Mm-hmm.
comes back and she's like scandalous, to everybody there,
Hmm.
but she really like upends the town with her gravitas and her style and all these
The,
things. And
the
it's
plot
such
you're
a
describing is dangerously close to being a Lifetime movie. If you tell
it
me she
is.
runs into a
It
dude, there's
really
okay.
it is so close to being a Lifetime
Yeah.
movie, but it's like a good one. So
Okay.
anyway,
Okay.
she just does everything. She can do everything well. I don't know. What about you?
Well, like coincidentally, well, first off, I have not seen enough Kate Winslet. You said she picks really good roles, and that's probably what she doesn't do enough shitty movies for me to have seen her in, action films or like things like that. I need to watch more
Lamar's
Kate
learning
Winslet.
how to watch
Yeah,
good films on
she
this
doesn't do any
podcast.
horror movies. Like, come on, Kate, do something that I'm going to appreciate. But yeah, I need to go back and that's also part of the reason why we're doing Kate Blanchett month. Same deal. I just have not seen very many of her films, but coincidentally, you said Kate Winslet. The first one that came to mind for me was Leo. Also Titanic, and been around a little longer, like What's Eating Gilbert Grape. But today, just still, he's in one of my favorite movies of all time, The Departed. I know that's like the
Yeah.
super broy answer, but like I
But
love that
it's
fucking
such a
movie.
good movie. Like it's
Yeah,
just a fucking good movie. Yeah.
yes. So I'd probably go with him. And I mean, he seems to get an Oscar nom every year or every other year at
Yeah.
this point. He finally got a win a few years back. But I'd probably go with Leo. It just feels like at this point, he doesn't really miss.
No, he's great. I think he's super consistent. And yeah, his Oscar was long overdue, as we all know. I just wish it wasn't for The Revenant. Like, he
That
says
was such a
20,
pity Oscar.
it was a pity Oscar. It's earned. He's earned it, but it's like he crawled into a horse carcass and they were like, let's give him an Oscar, even though he said 27 words in total in
Yeah.
this whole movie. But, I was just tired of hearing about like the conditions of filming. And I was like, the performance was
I mean,
fine,
he did fight a bear, so give him his damn flowers. But it,
I just, it was long overdue. He should have won for The Aviator, I thought, for sure.
he
So,
was so good in that. Just
so good.
show him the blueprints. Show him the blueprints. Like,
100%.
Keanu Reeves is still on the table. If either one of us wants to
Oh,
take Keanu
that's
Reeves,
true.
he's still
Fuck.
out there
Are we
floating.
traitors to our generation, actually?
We might
Because
be. We might be.
We love you, Keanu. We promise.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's talk about this one. Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lamar.
And we are in a whole new month. New month, new theme, new actress. So excited to talk about
actress, right?
Our first actress, which is like long overdue.
Yeah.
I feel like a bad woman, to be honest, that we have her just now getting here. But we're going to cover.
That's on you. It's my job to uphold the patriarchy. You're supposed to be the one that like talks sense into me and is like,
I'm supposed to dismantle the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I'm not carrying the team the way I should be. You're right. But this was my idea. I will say that.
Yes,
so we got here eventually. We're going to do a whole month talking about Cate Blanchett. And you haven't gotten to see a lot of her work, actually. So it's kind of exciting for you, right?
Yeah. Like I said in the intro, just I could probably count on one hand at least the number of roles I remember for Cate Blanchett that I've seen. You know, I know she's been in a ton of really good stuff, including this one. But yeah, I need to catch up.
Well, we're going to do it all month long. So we're kicking things off with her like real breakout. I mean, she obviously did some stuff, but her real breakout was her turn as Elizabeth I in 1998's Elizabeth. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Kind of keep it classy, like you said.
Yeah, I wore long sleeves. I never wear long sleeves.
Oh my God. I'm too hot. I couldn't. I'm like, I'm like sweating in here. Anyway, it's fine. Y'all, we're in Texas. We're getting our first like 90-degree days. We're already here. It's March. I'm not happy about it, but whatever. All right. So to keep us refreshed as we go through this, what are we drinking?
So yeah, you designed this one. We're calling this the Red Fox because she's redheaded in this and really hot. Is that why you named it that?
No, she's kind of becoming a fox in this. Like she's figuring out, you know, she's learning how to be cunning. She's learning how to be a queen, you know.
Okay.
We see that kind of progression here, I think. So she's
one of
working
those
her
like
way.
linguistic things like we talked about in Arrival.
Yeah.
Words have different meanings. Okay, I misinterpreted. She does look good though.
He's like she's hot, and I stopped there. So like we're good.
Awesome. Okay, so in the Red Fox, you're going to have 2 ounces of bourbon, an ounce of fresh blood orange juice, half an ounce of ginger liqueur, which we haven't busted that out in a while. Excited to use that again. 2 dashes of orange bitters. You're going to throw that all in a shaker with a good amount of ice, and then double strain it into a chilled glass. So make sure you chill it in advance. You're also going to need an orange peel, long and twisty. Express that over the drink and drop it into the glass. A little extra citrus in there for you.
Okay. How did yours come out?
Similar,
nice.
Similar color. Yeah. I did not have an orange on hand. I apologize. So mine's not as pretty.
I got these like great little blood orange cocktail oranges, which were perfect for this. So anyway, cheers. Okay, that's pretty good.
That's
if I do say so myself.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a good. We're recording this at 2:00 on a Sunday, and that's a good afternoon sipper.
Yeah, nice little summery cocktail. Okay, love that. All right. Well, let's do some basics really quick, and then we will get down to the good stuff. So, Elizabeth, like I said, 1998. It is so like, even though it's a period piece, I don't know how, but like I can tell that this is 1998. I don't know if you felt the same, but it just is.
There's a jump in how cameras, like just how footage looks from the 90s to the aughts.
Yeah.
There's a definite shift there.
And just like the kinds of stories they were telling around this time, which we'll get into it. It's like, you're just like, this is so 1998. But anyways, it's great. It's beautiful. 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 83% from critics and 86% from audiences, which is like pretty decent. But I thought it would be a little bit higher on the critic side. Just thinking about how it was received back then, but not bad.
Yeah. I think that's probably where I'm going to end up falling, not to spoil, but that's probably around where I'm going to be today. Cause I was like, it does feel very 98. If I'd seen it in 98, I'd probably have a lot more appreciation for it, but yeah, for its time, it's really good.
Yeah, for sure. So our director here has done some interesting stuff. We have Shekhar Kapur here, who has done both of the Elizabeths. So fun fact, spoiler alert, she doesn't die at the end of this. She keeps on living and reigning. So this is Elizabeth is the first one, and then it's Elizabeth, the Golden Age after that. But he also did another like period piece, The Four Feathers, which is also based off of a novel. And then the Will series, which was based on William Shakespeare. So he's like Tudor era Elizabethan like period pieces is this guy's vibe. And his writing team is the same. Michael Hirst, very similar type of period works. Did the Tudors, did Vikings, did Camelot. Funnily enough, Camelot and Vikings are both also period pieces. Yeah.
I know people love Vikings. I haven't seen it, but he's like the creator, showrunner, writer, like one man show for that entire thing.
One
And I
man
know that
show.
series blew up. So
And the Tudors too. Like the Tudors kind of like broke the seal, so to speak, on like sexy period drama pieces. Like that was the
okay,
one that really broke it out. And I remember that's like Jonathan Rhys Meyers, and we've talked about her a couple of times, and I can't remember her name, Natalie something. But they're like that series was very long lived, and actually Henry Cavill, that was one of his big breakouts in
oh
that
okay,
series as well. And I want to say that was like 4 or 5 seasons. It was pretty long. And so, yeah, he wrote all of that. And then Camelot was like them trying to do the same type of thing, but for the Arthur story. And I
mm-hmm.
think I'm one of 10 people who watched that show. Like nobody else watched
Did
that
it not get
show.
a second season? I
It
guess.
did
Like,
not
okay,
last. I think it was maybe 2 seasons, but it did not last long.
okay,
I also think Arthur is hard to do right to keep people entertained. But
yeah.
anyways, that's our team here. Like this is what they do. This is their wheelhouse, is the point. So our major cast and crew here, like we said, Cate Blanchett. We're going to talk about a bunch of her films this month, obviously. So I'm just going to name one of the ones that we're not going to cover, but she did an amazing work in, which is Blue Jasmine. So it's like her Woody Allen turn, just where she won the Oscar for Best Actress. So she had won for Best Supporting, but she wins for Best Actress in Blue Jasmine, which is after the fact. So pretty cool.
Okay. And yeah, her playing Elizabeth here. Apparently, this was Meryl Streep's role. Well, she wanted it. She auditioned. One of 4 roles that Meryl Streep was told, no, we'd rather go with somebody else. I think I know the 2 of the others are. She wanted to be Iron Man in the Robert Downey Jr. vehicle, and she was denied the shark in Jaws. I don't know what the 3rd one is, but yeah.
I feel like 1, I didn't know that, and 2, the balls on whoever did that. Like, I mean, like honestly,
like, we're good. We don't need you, Meryl Streep.
Right?
Going in a
like
different direction.
who says that to her? I would
Yeah.
never. I would never. But okay, brave, sure.
Yeah.
Geoffrey Rush. We all know Geoffrey Rush. We've talked about him before. The man, the myth, the legend. He plays Sir Francis Walsingham, who is a big character, like in this film, but also in her life. I mean, like if you read about this, historians have a lot to say about how basically his life story and hers are almost indistinguishable for a period of like 40 years. You know, like they are hand in hand at this point. And you see in this film kind of the dramatization of why that happens, like why she becomes so reliant on him. But he is known for a gazillion things that we have talked about. But he did one that I really love of his, I wanted to mention, was the King's Speech. Like he's the
right?
Yeah, he's the speech pathologist who helps King George like kind of get a handle on his speaking. And I think for Geoffrey Rush, it's just an interesting turn. It's like a pretty different character for him in general, but he does such a great job. So good one to watch.
I'll lean my usual way and just say Pirates of the Caribbean. Like I think Barbeau, like he's objectively, I think the second best part of that. Like Johnny Depp makes those films, but I think Geoffrey Rush is second, like most interesting thing about those movies throughout the series.
100%. I mean, and that's why they like go down a rabbit hole in the second one, right? That is very much about Barbossa. And so like he's so compelling. He does such a good job. I love those kinds of roles where like people get to really like stretch creatively and be kind of a real extreme, and they both do such a good job in that one for sure. So
Agreed.
Christopher Eccleston is our next up. He plays a Duke of Norfolk who is incredibly powerful in England at this time and kind of a big deal, but funnily enough, doesn't actually do a lot in this movie, to the degree that the director basically made him move and be in motion a lot, so it would feel like he was an intense antagonist. So that makes me laugh. But he has done, I think we've talked about him a couple times. I love him in Gone in 60 Seconds as like the extreme villain that he is in that. I forgot
he was in that. That's been a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not actually even really, it's not what he's quote known for on IMDb, but it's the thing that I think of him for. But he's most known for Malekith in Thor, I think.
I was going to say, he's in like widely regarded as one of the worst Marvel movies. Not his fault. It's a really bad movie though. But he was in the only good season of Heroes. If you ever watched Heroes back in the day, he kind of like was in the first season, and then he was like, oh, this show's turning to shit, I'm out of here, because everything after that was horrible.
Yeah, I heard that started strong and then went down, but I hadn't started it. So then when I heard it went down, I was like, I'm not going to watch it.
Don't bother,
Unsubscribe.
Dude. Don't bother.
Unsubscribe. All right. Next up, we have Joseph Fiennes, who plays Robert Dudley. He has done a bazillion things. And fun fact, he's Ray Fiennes' brother, if you didn't already know that. All of their family are like ridiculously
Yeah, there's like
accomplished. If you look
6
at it,
children, and they're
yeah,
all doing shit. Yeah.
they're all doing cool shit. Not even just artistic shit, like cool shit.
Mhm.
Anyways, that's neither here nor there. This guy does all period piece work as well. Like that's his vibe.
Mhm.
And what we probably most know him for is Shakespeare in Love. So
That was the
that's
same
his,
year
like,
as this, right? Like the exact
it's
same year. I think they were
I
actually
think
Oscar
so.
nominated
Yeah,
the
because
same
Judi
year.
Dench is nominated at the same time.
Mhm.
So yes. That's what I'm saying. Like 98, they're like, let's just crank out all these Elizabethan period dramas and see what happens. They all came out great. They did a great job.
Yeah. There's a reason they continue to like The Crown probably wouldn't exist if not for all these movies that got made in like the late 90s, early aughts.
It's true. It's true. That's actually is a great precursor to these. So that's good. Good
I
call
know it's a
out.
different Elizabeth. I'm not that dumb. I'm just saying, like, I think The Crown owes a little bit of debt here.
Other longest reigning Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So it's relevant. It's relevant. So next up, we have John Gielgud, who I wanted to call out, even though it's a small role. One, he's done a bazillion things. He's, pretty famous classic actress, most well known for probably Murder on the Orient Express, the original. But he plays Pope Pius V here, who's kind of a big deal in Elizabeth's life in terms of he's the one who actually writes the papal bull that says that basically the Catholics of the world do not have to adhere to her reign, because she's a heretic. So kind of a big deal. Just a little big deal.
Yeah, that was I didn't know when the right time was to go down a little rabbit hole that I found myself in, because before we even get into the plot of this, the first thing I wrote down was religion is stupid. Religion is always stupid. I'm like, why are these people? Sorry to offend anyone out there. It's not, believe what you want to believe, but people arguing over religion is stupid.
Yep.
And in this, I'm like, it starts out and there's people killing because of their beliefs. And it's like, they both believe in God. They both believe in Jesus. They basically believe the same thing, but they're murdering each other. And there's basically a civil war happening in this and throughout this film. But I went and Googled it because I wrote that down. And I was like, well, let me understand this a little bit more. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole to understand what exactly Protestantism is. Like, why is there a difference? And because I never bothered to look it up. But essentially, it just came out of a legitimate protest. That's where the word comes from. That stemmed from like Martin Luther saying, hey, it's kind of bullshit that the Catholic Church controls this religion and doctrine. They have a human leader in the Pope, and he kind of says how we should interpret the Bible. And he thought it was more on an individual basis, like you should just read the scripture and hear what God wants you to hear or whatever. And then the other thing was literally the Catholic Church was selling forgiveness. It was taken as like, hey, if you donate to the funding of this church, you can get into heaven. Like you can buy your way into heaven, basically was the thing. And he, Martin Luther heard that and was like, that is bullshit. So this other religion came out of it, and they sort of denied the Catholic Church. They denied the Pope and like all the things that were in place there. And today you wouldn't know that there's much of a difference aside from like the Pope of it all, because I remember going to church at Protestant church, and you still give 10% of your money to them. So you're still, maybe you're not buying your way into heaven, but it's expected that you're tithing, right?
Well, there's a difference between tithing and indulgences. So what you're talking about are indulgences, which ran for a period of the Catholic Church where they were saying, yes, if you explicitly pay for forgiveness for this sin, like 1-to-1, versus a tithe is an ongoing contribution of your income to the church out of deference to the faith and to the church and to keep the church running, in theory. So they're two different things. And yes, the tithing was the indulgences were a big issue for Martin Luther and Protestantism. And there actually are a ton of differences between Protestantism and Catholicism. They don't believe in transubstantiation, for example, all kinds of things like that.
Who said I didn't, transubstantiation? What is that?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's what it is. No, transubstantiation is the belief that when you take in the Eucharist in a Catholic church, it's the cracker and the wine. Yeah. The belief is that communion is actually the body and blood of Jesus at that blessing, and that's what you as a congregant are ingesting. And because your body is a temple, you can't have like sinned or not asked forgiveness or things like that to take communion. So that's why you hear priests denying communion to people. It was more common back then. So you would have to buy an indulgence, for example, if you had knowingly sinned and they knew about it. You'd have to buy indulgence to take communion, for example. And Protestants don't believe in that. They just believe that it's a metaphor. They believe it's representative.
I'm for that. I don't want to eat Jesus. I'm all for like the cracker and wine and like what it represents, But I do not want to believe that I'm literally eating Jesus Christ. That seems weird.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, I was raised in it. And if you ever explain, like if you grew up Catholic and you're like, this is normal, and you go explain it to somebody after the fact, you're like, I sound like a fucking crazy person. So no, I'm with you. But this is a really interesting time in history because of, the actual, English Reformation is basically that ongoing war inside of England about whether or not you should be Protestant or Catholic. And Henry VIII was actually deeply Catholic. He was actually a pretty devout Catholic, but he was so motivated by his need for a divorce that, then we have him basically having this schism with the church and all of this ensues. So it's kind of nuts. Nuts.
The very last,
yeah, because religion is crazy. Because religion is crazy.
It's bonkers. the very last little fact I wanted to throw here was really what made this all possible was the invention of the printing press, because now you didn't need a priest or the Pope telling you what's in the Bible and interpreting it for you. Like, you could print the Bible in every language, people can buy it and read it and really interpret it for themselves. So that kind of is what gave way to Protestantism. And I think that just about wraps it up for who's the actor we're talking about right now? Somebody that has a really small part in this movie.
Like the Pope, the guy who plays the Pope and is in it for 3.5 minutes.
Okay, well, that's actually very fitting that we talked about this here, but it's like he's in the movie for 3 minutes and we just talked about him for longer than he's in the movie. Yeah.
Well, it was, we needed to give him credit where it's due. But yeah, so the Gutenberg Bible was like the beginning that preceded the Martin Luther of it all, which preceded the schism in Protestant and Catholic England. And it informs a lot of this story, to be totally fair. So it's a worthy diversion. And I will also be contributing more nerd stuff. Okay, so very last one. I swear we're going to get to the movie. Richard Attenborough, who we've talked about a million times, plays Sir William Cecil, who is very important early on, but doesn't last very long in her reign. So we see him for a little bit, but not a lot of bit. But he's our Jurassic Park guy. We had to mention him for sure.
Yeah. You don't want to give a little shout out here to Daniel Craig?
Oh my God, you're so right. So this is Daniel Craig's first real appearance, but he's here for 35 seconds really. So it's kind of funny. This is pre-Layer Cake, for example, you guys, which is his big breakout. But he's so fun. He just barely gets any words. He's just this really extreme zealot. Really,
I could not stop laughing at his haircut in this.
His hair,
like little Dutch boy. I don't know. There's something going on there. But apparently,
this was so of the time.
If rumors to be believed, this is the role that ended up getting him Bond. One of the producers saw him in this and just thought he oozed charisma in like you said, the 30 seconds he's actually on screen. So supposedly, this will nets him Bond.
I thought he got Bond because of Layer Cake.
I'm just telling you what IMDb told me.
Let's ask IMDb to clarify. Okay. Please tell us which one was it, you bitches? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, very quick plot summary, which you maybe got from everything we digressed upon, but
we just told you the entire
we just told you all of it. The early years of the reign of Elizabeth I of England and her difficult task of learning what it is necessary to be a monarch. I think that's pretty fair. She's going through some shit, this girl.
This is basically a speed run of a single game or the entirety of Game of Thrones, minus the dragons and magic shit. But this just feels like a political drama.
This is exactly the same but different is what I feel like you just said.
I felt like I was watching no but I mean take Game of Thrones, I feel like has two components, right? It's the magic fantasy element of it, but then it's all the political backstabbing and people trying to get to ascend to power, and I feel like that is what this film is. I'm this is a 2-hour version of the Game of Thrones, the people sort of debating and trying to jump in line and betraying each other. I just feel like there's a lot of that in this.
It's period piece political intrigue, which existed both before and after Game of Thrones. But this is one of the best, I think, representations, especially in the 90s of that. And this is, again, we're saying, where it's, kind of trending. This topic is kind of trending and it's done really well. And it's done really beautifully, just aesthetically speaking. So, I mean, with all that set to say, if we haven't already, Turn Around, Don't Drown, it's spoiler time. A lot of this, again, is historical. So I feel like if you pay attention to history at all, you already know some of this. It's not totally 100% accurate. They really truncate the timetable is another big thing to consider here. A lot of the events here actually span between 10 and 15 years of her reign, and they condense it into basically 4. And it takes her a lot longer to come to some of these conclusions and things like that. But it made a good amount of money. $30 million budget, 82 million in box office. So people liked it. People really enjoyed it. Yeah. And it won the Oscar for best makeup, which I think makes a lot of sense, especially at the end, when you're seeing the full shebang, for which Elizabeth was so well known. And you see that kind of progression for her as her character. But yeah, it won for that. And
it didn't win costume, or like
it didn't, but it was nominated. Okay. Yeah, it got several other nominations, but it didn't win. So but yeah, they had to, throw him a bone. But I think the costumes were really good. I think Shakespeare in Love won for costumes.
That would, it's kind of like pick your poison there.
Pick your Elizabethan costume designer. 100%.
Yeah, I wrote down, one of the first things I wrote down was the costume and set design in this and makeup is incredible. One thing that I didn't like, just to kick us off here, is the amount of dancing. I did not need like 6 different dance sequences of like old clapping, weird waltz movements. That happens way too fucking much in this. But aside from that, the movie's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not like the Knight's Tale version where we're like having a good song
David
that like
Bowie's playing.
Yeah,
we're not.
It's a little too period for it. I agree. It wasn't like the dance scenes could happen one time, and one of them in particular like leads to a big fight with her and Robert Dudley, which I think is important to tell this story. But again, just for historical reference, like that was an ongoing relationship throughout her reign. He's not quite as exiled in the way you would have it be believed here, but he was the most, one of the most important childhood friends of hers, and that was just, I guess, the vehicle for them to show that in a little bit more detail, kind of over and over again. But
yeah, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, I guess.
I guess so. I only have a few things to talk about here because I think one, it's a largely historical story, and what I would summarize this to be is like it's a beautiful, like visually stunning, well acted, well shot adaptation of that time and of this story. And I think what's more compelling to dig into, for me at least, it is like the layers to the history of it. And I think he does a good job here of showing how she as a character has to transition from being this young, pure virgin, queen who is pretty, carefree for a while there, not really fully understanding the gravity of being a monarch, like it says. But she did, I want to clarify, always live under threat, right? Like she, not to get too in the weeds on the history, but she was the daughter of Anne Boleyn versus Mary I is the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, who was Henry VIII's first wife. So Mary I was seen as the more legitimate heir, almost universally. And she was removed, Elizabeth was removed from the line of succession when she was 2. She was put back in the line of succession by Henry when she was 10. So from the time she's 10 on, she's a bit more secure. But for, 8 years as a child, she's seen as illegitimate. She's seen as maybe even a threat. So I think she's always had in the back of her mind this possibility that she would die for being who she is. And she just stays far enough removed from court that she tries to kind of preserve some semblance of normalcy. And like, that's kind of where we see her in her early 20s, like away, relatively safe, like playing the game. She's going to Catholic mass. She's pretending that she believes all this stuff. And that way she's mostly safe. And what throws it into upheaval is that Mary is starting to die. Like then the act of succession becomes an issue again. And really, she's not the only, there's several heirs. There's a whole thing that happens there. But she's the most reasonable next choice because she's the daughter of King Henry VIII by his next wife, Anne Boleyn. So we see that pressure kind of evolve here.
Yeah, they to a lot of the points you just made, I like how they established the character early on. I know it's a real person, but the character early on of being like, she doesn't seem bothered by any of it. Like, yeah, you said she's kind of going through the motions a little bit. She seems happy and content, just off doing her thing, hanging out with her friends and, her would-be boyfriend, I guess, every day. But there's a scene where I think when you talked about her sort of changing and having to adapt to this new role, I think the best scene in the film for me is the combination of when she's doing she's practicing that speech for when she's about to go deliver
Yeah,
to the bishops, and
to
it's just
Parliament.
multiple cuts of her talking at the camera and kind of practicing and trying to get the verbiage right and all that, and then you kind of see her step into that role when she's speaking to the bishop. She starts out very soft spoken and like nervous, and then as she becomes and like lets a little more of her actual personality and being outspoken and being a little catty and humorous and joking with them and like kind of roasting the people sitting in front of her, that's when they sort of get on board with the cause. So I think that like 5 minute sequence or 10 minute sequence is my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah. So to be clear, she's speaking to Parliament and people who are influenced by the Catholic Church as well. So we're coming off of a largely Catholic regime with Mary, who is, by the way, Bloody Mary. If you've ever heard that term, this is that queen, and it's because she's
the one that pops up in the mirror when you say it 3 times.
Basically, she's the one killing all. She's killing all the Protestants. She's the one doing all the bloody murder of the Protestants.
I mean, she's kind of attractive. Maybe I got to go play Bloody Mary today. I kind of like Mary in this. So, just saying.
That's an interesting choice.
It's not as bad as we were led to believe it would be. I thought Bloody Mary would be hideous, but she's not.
Well, we see that her go to Parliament, give the speech. I agree. I think that's when you see her start to lean in to her own power. That's the thing that I think in general is like the story that we're watching here is she's been beholden to a lot of advisors, including Cecil, who is trying to really just keep her on the Protestant pathway, which is fair, but he's a little bit of an extremist as well, right? He's an extremist as a Protestant and Norfolk's an extremist as a Catholic, and they're really butting heads. And this is her being very political. Like, and that's really who she was as a queen. She was Protestant for sure. She did believe in her faith, but she would play, like I said, she would play the game. She believed in it as I will be respectful to other belief systems when I need to be, but I personally am a Protestant. So what she's arguing for here is the act of unification. And she wants to prevent civil war in her mind. And I like that this is kind of where the Fox reference starts for me, is like, I like that she leans into her own cunning, her own maneuvering that she can do. And like you said, her personality, and she kind of lets that come out rather than just listening to her advisors. And I think, Cate Blanchett plays it so well, like the different phases of this queen. You see her move through that in a really organic way that I think she does a great job for.
She also leans into voter suppression. Turns out that's always been a thing. They just lock those 5 guys up and it's like it passed by 5 votes. It's like, well, that's not a problem anymore.
But she gets to play ignorant, right? She gets to be like, I have no idea what my advisors were doing. Yeah, like that is a tale as old as time for sure. Yeah. But I like that progression, not only as the way she is written and what she does, but we have to talk also about like her physicality. She's like very loose and carefree in the early scenes. Her hair is loose, her makeup is light, and you can see her freckles more, right? Like she's not as done up. She's very casual early on, this young girl, pure virgin girl. And you see her get like tighter and tighter and more restrained, like in her costuming, in her stature, in the way that she moves, in her makeup. And like you just see her, the way I see it kind of in this story, and what I think they're doing very effectively here is like her becoming a figurine, like as in a figurehead, right, of this state, of this nation. And she's becoming this like visual representation of that. And you kind of see that happen slowly in a pretty subtle way.
It's subtle enough, and then at the end it does hammer home sort of the point of it, if she's kind of turning herself into this virgin figure, this almost like godlike, they have a shot of the Virgin Mary statue right there as she's sort of going through her transformation. It's very on the nose of like, the people need to see me as something greater than what they are, or like something to believe in, a concept. And that's why that whole makeover at the end makes total sense.
And it's interesting that you see her kind of on her knees at one point in the
Hmm.
church, really like realizing the impact and the power of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and saying, like, men will die for her. They fall at their knees and believe in her because of everything that she represents. And again, she's pure, she's a virgin, she is, her motives are always pure. And I think that's when you see her really realize not only can she achieve that because she's not yet married, but also that it is a political tool. Like it is a way for her to create her as a symbol. And it's it's not something that has really been done. And like I think I want to give credit where it's due here. Of like she's the young, naive character at the beginning of this story. And by the time we get to the end, she is a
She's like
political
hardened.
operative,
Yeah.
right? She's an operative. She's smart. She's strategic. And she rules England for 44 years or whatever it is, which is the longest Tudor reign and the longest reign up until our most recent Elizabeth II. So like she knew what the fuck she was doing. And everyone underestimated her and thought she couldn't do it. And I love us seeing this like progression of her turning into that.
Now, to clarify, because there is a sex scene in this, right? Like she's not literally a
She's
virgin.
not
It's more
literally a virgin.
yeah,
No, no,
like
no.
she's portraying herself in this change. Okay.
I think the thing is, like, back then, of course, you just didn't ever say that outright. But
Right.
one, all monarchs had mistresses, and she had a mister, as it were. Robert Dudley is like largely assumed to be the love of her life. That is historically accurate. He stays in her life until I think he dies 15 years before her. But he had like they had stayed in close contact. He stayed at court. She banned his second wife from court. He had actually had a first wife who fell down the stairs,
You put
and
that in
they
quotations for those of you not on video.
for those of you not on video,
I
fell
mean,
down
I
the
think
stairs,
it's not
quote unquote,
disputed that she fell down the stairs. I think how she came to fall down the stairs might be in
is
question.
largely disputed.
Yeah.
And the scandal that arose like prevented Elizabeth from marrying him because everyone thought
Mm.
it was him trying to marry her. But it was ruled an accident, blah, blah, blah. But she didn't marry him. And he did marry someone else in secret and not tell her, which again, they truncate this down quite a bit here in the film. She doesn't find out until a year later, but she doesn't ban him. She bans his wife from court.
Hmm.
And they maintain a close relationship. So he is, yeah, again, largely assumed to be the love of her life. And she kept his last letter to her by her bedside until her death. So they had a very serious romantic relationship, but she refused to be married to him or anyone else. And I have always thought, not only as this character in this film, that is so brilliant, right? Like she's turning herself into the most pure representation of the state, of the
And
crown.
she's also being pursued by what 3 or 4 different suitors throughout
Mm-hmm.
this, and and
Mm-hmm.
everyone around her is telling her, "You need to marry. Like we need this alliance. We need to kind of like you need to settle and do this selfless thing." And I just
Right.
love one of her last lines is, "Look, I'm married. I'm married to England." And I
I'm
think that is
married to
just such
England.
a great line.
Yeah, I think it is. And it also is so representative of what she has learned over the period of this film and of her
Hmm.
years of reign at this point is that she can't really trust anyone, and that everyone, regardless of who she can trust, everyone will have a different perception of whomever she marries. I love how funny and clever she is. We see it a bunch of times, but one of the things that she does in that speech that you referenced to Parliament defending the act of unification is she says, like, I can't make everyone happy unless I marry one of each of these. Right. I have to marry Spain. I have to marry France. I have to marry,
Right.
and then I have to also be a virgin queen. I have to do everything. And it's like the early Barbie monologue, but in Elizabethan
Right.
era
Yeah.
England. She's like, I got to do everything perfect and then also be a virgin and blah, blah, to make everyone happy. And it's fucking impossible. And I just love that she calls that out and says, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to prioritize the state, the crown, my people, etc. And it works. Like
Yeah,
that's the key. It works.
The other half of that, of what gets us there, is that incredible sequence where you talked about it, how she has to make these tough decisions and is just like being advised by Walsingham, and goddamn, Walsingham goes so hard in this. Like he might
He's
be
so
my
fucking
favorite
good.
character. It's just,
But he's so like restrained. He is so
cool,
hardcore,
calm,
but he's
collected. Yeah.
yep.
And
Yeah.
he's assassinating people, he's
Yeah.
torturing people, and he just doesn't even
Mm-hmm.
blink. But he's kind of the best advisor she's got. And eventually it leads us to that moment or that sequence where it's kind of lifted straight from The Godfather of like, she's just
It
chilling,
literally is.
like, yeah, reading scripture or whatever while all these
Mm-hmm.
murders are happening at her command. And it's so like very telling of like who the person she has been forced to become to get around all of these people telling her what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck to do.
And Kapoor, by the way, says that outright. He actually says that was 100% lifted from The
Oh, like
Godfather.
literally, he was
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
I like The Godfather. We need that in
He's
this
like,
movie.
listen, it was very inspirational. That's what we did here. So
Okay.
that is 100% accurate. And I love that you see, Walsingham go execute. And I think that's such a shift, right? You see her defend the act of unification. Walsingham's kind of going and acting on his own, and she wins by 5 votes. LOL. But then at the end, she is a full participant. And I think that's the difference here of like, you see her being, he is ultimately acting in her best interest at that point. And also I think in the interest of England avoiding civil war at that point in terms of this exact moment. But then you see her become a full partner and participant. And I think what I love about Sir Francis from the very first council meeting is he believes in her. And he doesn't want her to just listen to everyone and be bullied by everyone.
Yeah.
He says that line about, princes should not just listen to everyone around them. They should, pause and evaluate all their options, basically. She's the prince in the scenario, you guys. And he basically encourages her to take a beat and think about the strategic outcome here. And she's bullied by everyone else in the room to do it. That ends up becoming disastrous. They did not have a standing army and they were slaughtered, literally. And so she deeply regrets that decision. And I think it teaches her a lot. And it teaches her that Walsingham is an ally.
That sequence, like, not to cut you short here, but that
that's
shot where we open, I didn't love the bloody water coming down. That looked something about the way that was shot in like slow motion or something. It looked a little weird, like it didn't look like actual bloody water. But as soon as it starts panning over and you see the bodies floating in the water, and then that shot continues and you see all the carnage from this battle when we're first introduced to Mary. That shot, I think, is my favorite shot of the movie. As beautiful as this is, I think that is my favorite actual shot.
And I think there are actually what I know, I haven't watched this in a few years. I've seen it several times, but I haven't seen it in a few years. And I think what struck me on this watch is how much more violent and gory it is than I remembered, because it is actually, it's not all beauty. You have that shot, which is horrifying. You have obviously the deposition of all these people that get murdered as a result of, her spy master who comes in and gets shit done for her. But you even also have on a smaller scale, the assassination attempts on her are pretty bloody and violent. And one of the worst ones is when Dudley's heartbroken by her, basically makes her lady in waiting pretend to be her in a role, like a really dark
cosplay,
and a little role play, a little cosplay, and then she is in a poisoned dress.
Didn't even know the poisoned dress. Found that out in this movie.
Who fucking knew? And she just breaks out in these horrible welts, and like you see it get really, really, really brutal and gory there as well. So I think it brings in a necessary gore to this time. And I think they do a good job of how they pace it in and they weave it into the story, because it wasn't all beautiful courts and rainbows and court jesters and beautiful feasts. It was murder and blood and scheming and all these things, and they work it in.
Yeah, I think that's where my comparison to Game of Thrones kind of stems from, is it has, for 1998, kind of political period piece, it's really graphic. There's a lot of death in this. And shout out to I cannot remember the actress's name, but the girl that plays Isabel, who would go on to be in Boardwalk Empire. Her screaming in that scene is like terrifying, because you can tell how much pain she's in.
It starts kind of silly, but it gets really dark. It's silly because you think she's just like really overreacting to what's happening, right? And then you're like, girl, like, be quiet. And then you realize like she's in pain, something terrible is happening. And I also think it shows, and there's no historical evidence to this, but I think Robert Dudley's character is basically meant to be a really weak like a very weak foil to Elizabeth, right? Like, she loves him, but he's weak and he lies to her and he has a wife and all these things. He's in love with her, but he can't make anything happen. And so that is really made manifest in this scene, because he abandons this girl. Like she is clearly in extreme pain, being poisoned. Something is hurting her, and he just runs. You
Yeah,
know, he
he
just
lets her fucking die.
runs.
Yeah.
He lets her die and he runs and he doesn't stay in to help or try to get any help. And so it makes him look so much like a just like a weasel, you know? And
Yeah.
she then by contrast is again this like very strong and assertive and empowered woman. I think that's an interesting choice here by the filmmaker, and it works. I think it works.
On a first watch, I will say one of my critiques of this is some components were a little hard to follow without being super studied up on the history of all of this. Some of like the who is aligned with who, and to your point, you know,
Oh,
the
okay.
villain in this isn't really doing much. We see all these side conversations happening, and I think at times I was even confusing like which one is the Spain guy and which one is the France guy. Like I was confusing the suitors a little bit, and they're sort of like helping hands. And that sequence that we just described with the dress, I think that moment makes it worth it, like that
Yeah.
horrifying moment. But the lead
Right.
up to that to me was not super well written. I
Yeah.
don't love. I think the Robert reveal that he's married, that hits. You're like, oh shit! Like as a
Yeah.
viewer, I had no idea. Like again, didn't know the history of this. That moment hits really hard. But then he immediately sort of starts sulking and complaining about how he's loved. I just feel like there wasn't enough of a sort of hints in the writing up to this point. I know there's the moment they're on the boat and he's kind of drunk and like
Yeah.
telling her that they should get married. Like there's a couple little things, but I feel like they needed to sell me a little more on him kind of going, you know, Snidely Whiplash villain here. He's like sulking and crying. And then that sequence, they she just ran they 2 minutes before that, they have a moment where they're like, don't put on the queen's clothes. And it's like that to me is not an earned
Mm,
thing where we haven't seen
yeah.
her trying on the dresses throughout the entire film.
No.
Just they're like,
Yeah.
she's putting on the dress now. Oh no, that dress is poison. So there's little writing critiques I would give this, but
Yeah.
overall, I'm not going to hate on it.
No, I think there's two major complaints I would have. Yes, I think the writing, and I think it might also be a result of editing, to be fair, but I think
Yes.
the writing doesn't quite land in terms of keeping pace with the story and making everything super clear. I also just think the pacing is a little off in general. There were
Yeah.
parts where I don't know if it's because I've watched it multiple times or what, but like it felt a little slow to me.
The beginning, I
Um,
think, is once she gives that speech and sort of asserts her. I think the movie gets infinitely more
we spend a
interesting after
lot of
that.
time, yeah, like exposition wise, like
Yes.
building her up as this one and like that's just a little long. I agree, but I will say part of it I do think is I know the history here. I'm a history nerd, especially about this time. Like I'm a big, deep Henry VIII nerd. What I think helped me with that is that Duke of Norfolk he was the one who tried to get Mary to remove her as her heir, and who in all supposition potentially tried to get a different heir, a Catholic heir in general, but he also wanted her to be arrested as a part of Wyatt's rebellion, because Wyatt's rebellion is the one that we do see her be interrogated about that, about being a part of that scheme, which in theory she was not. And he is the one who had her arrested, put in the tower, was trying to urge Mary to kill her. So his villainous nature is really predates her being on the throne as far
Mm-hmm.
as what we see. There's not evidence that he's the man behind the assassination attempts. So that's where I think they're like connecting some dots
That's
that
yeah.
aren't
I
there.
think Norfolk, like I said, as the villain, I just needed a little more from a writing perspective to cut. It's like yeah, it's a little bit handholdy, but for somebody
Yeah.
who doesn't know the history on a first
No,
watch
I think
through, I
that's a
need you to tell
fair
me what's going on.
I think that's a totally fair criticism, because like now that just I think about it in retrospect, I'm like, I don't know that I would have understood that. And Dudley, like his motivations are very hard to follow as well, to be
Yeah.
fair, because he does love her. He does want to be with her. There's not evidence of this, by the way, to be clear, that he did any of this, but he believes that he's helping her keep her throne. Like, Norfolk wants her off the throne. Dudley wants her on the throne and wants to be with her,
Right.
and they don't do a good job of explaining why the choices that Dudley would make would do that, would help her.
Right. In the
Yeah.
context of the film, without knowing
Yeah.
all the historical stuff you said earlier about the shitty things that he potentially did and did do, but like in the context of this film on a first watch, in my eyes, Dudley hadn't done anything wrong really until we find out, okay, he's been married this whole time and hasn't told her. So we as the viewer, I guess we're expected to assume, oh, he's been lying about a bunch of other shit. And so he must be kind of a bad guy, but it doesn't land in the writing of this. And then 2 minutes later, he's like, "Oh, should I betray her now because she doesn't like me?" And it's like, wait, where did that come from? That's just the one, again, critique that I'll give.
The lovers quarrel piece like kind of contradicts the history a little bit, and I think that's a fair criticism, because again, I don't know that you would follow this if you didn't know all of this for sure. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, again, it's like really beautifully stunning visuals and intense visuals. Like the gore is there, that is accurate to the time and to what happens in the story. But I think her progression as a character, you really do see that come to fruition in this. Again, they truncate the timetable quite a bit, but I do think this is her growth as a person, as a historical figure, but also as this character that we get to watch. And you see why she makes the choices that she makes. So I think it's ultimately effective in that way.
Yeah, that consolidated view of the history. Like I think this is a case where it's like, yeah, I'm actually grateful that you shortened this story into a 2 hour
right,
because it is interesting, but I don't need like the 3.5 hour version. That was like, I was shocked that this movie from 1998, and you were like, we're going to do Elizabeth. I was going to, Amazon, and I was like, this is going to be fucking 3 hours long. And I looked, 2 hours and 3 minutes. Hell yeah, let's go,
I mean, bless the 90s, because they were like, they wouldn't go over like a 2 hour plus. Like Titanic's the first one that really was like, let me fuck shit up,
And now
generally
the
they respected
and
that.
smartphones and like shortened attention spans. Why are we going the opposite direction?
Why are we going longer?
Every movie should be 22 minutes long, no longer. Like
they're so long now. They're so in my Oscars watch run this year, you guys, every time I was having to filter by how much time do I have to watch this movie, and they were all so fucking long. So yes, I agree with you 100%.
I blame Scorsese.
I fucking do actually, because he won't stop. He won't stop, and everybody else thinks that they can do that too. Anyways, all that to say, I enjoy this film. I think it's not perfect by any means, or I think it would have gotten more recognition than it did even if it were. But what's kind of your takeaway rating?
Like I said, I think I'm going to come mostly in line with where the IMDb rating falls. I think on a first watch, I missed out on a lot, just from, like I said, kind of the shortcomings of the writing. But again, beautiful film, some great shots, obviously great performances. Everyone in this crushes it. One that we didn't actually talk about was Andrew. I forget the actor's name, but God, he's one of the best parts of the movie.
Vincent Cassel plays Anjou. Yeah, I should have included him. He does have a great, interesting turn here, actually.
He kind of like carries the middle part of this film. He's the most at those parts you said were kind of drags. Like when he's on screen, he helps, eats it up, and like he reminded me. I was like, he is the 1500s Russell Brand, like canceled, but just he's making dick jokes. He's immediately forcing himself on women. Like, not saying that's okay, but I'm just like, this dude's a fucking perv. And then the other reveal that we get is when he's dressed up in drag, and I think that scene also hits. Like,
it's a very good scene. It's not, again, rooted in historical fact, but he does actually pursue her for like a decade in real life. So it's really interesting to see them like trim it down to this. And
it's a handful of scenes, but it all works. So I think I'm gonna fall at about a 7 for a first time watch, which I know might seem a little low for Oscar nominated film, but I will watch this again at some point, knowing what I do now, and see if it helps connect the dots a little more.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it's fair to say on our first watch, like, it can be a little confusing for sure. So I think I would give it like an 8, because I do feel like I can connect the dots. I think there's some weakness in the writing still, even with me being able to connect those dots. I don't think that they make it super clear to the audience, but also like most of, again, Norfolk's crimes kind of predate this story, and he's supposed to be our major antagonist. And I think that's a weakness in the writing. And I think that you can do what she does with Dudley here in a little bit more concise way. Like you said, there's a lot of there's the like boat scene, there's multiple dance scenes, there's all these things that I'm like, I don't need this much to get this, but on the whole, I think it's very well performed. I think as a breakout performance for Cate Blanchett, incredible. And I think it shows us kind of a precursor to all the things that she can do in her career. So I do still really enjoy it. But yeah, pacing, a little bit of writing flaws, I think, but on the whole, it's still a great film.
That scene at the beginning when we talked about the dancing multiple times, but when they're like just together in that room by themselves and they do the little clap dance and they're nuzzling a little bit and it's like walking around clapping in a room together. That actually, fun fact, in the 1500s, that was getting to third base. So that's why I asked earlier, like, she's not a virgin. Like, right in the beginning, they show them getting to third base, for the record.
You would be the translator of the bases between now and the 1500s. So good work. Good on you. Good on you.
Thank you.
Before we go, hit us with the what's the worst factoid you learned about this?
Yeah, so those of you who have listened the past couple of weeks, I'm trying to do a new thing where as I'm scrolling through IMDb and looking up the quote unquote fun facts about different films, I'm trying to pick out the one that's not that interesting or fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're poorly rated, like people don't find them interesting when you can thumbs up or thumbs down. And we've done that for a few weeks now. This is the first week where I couldn't really find a bad one. Most
they're
of them
all
are
like nerd
yeah.
history shit.
It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah. For the me's of the world is what
so
it is.
You're in there thumbs upping everything in the Elizabeth factoids. I couldn't find a bad one, but I did find one that kind of justifies what we're talking about, and it's not a bad fact. But I'll just throw another good one out because good on you, IMDb. You guys crushed on this one. But this is the only picture that year that was a Best Picture nominee, but did not get a Best Writing nomination, which totally, makes sense considering what we've been talking about.
So we were correct, is what we've learned about the writing limitations here. Okay.
Do better.
Okay. Yeah, do better. Get your shit together. No, I'm just kidding. We still like this movie, let's be clear. No, fun fact. All right, well, thanks for joining, fam. This was fun. This was a good nerd outing for me. I haven't had one of those in a minute. So that was nice. I feel
like you haven't nerded out this much since we did like F1 and you got to talk about cars for like 2 hours.
It's true. It's true. I haven't had a good nerd moment in a while, and I thank you all for that. So come back next week where I won't get to nerd out really, sadly, but it's fine. It's still a fun one with Cate Blanchett, and it's a real hard left turn. We're going to talk about Bandits, which is like, I don't know, kind of a dark horse a little bit.
Another first time watch for me, and I'm gonna have thoughts.
I sort of, what's funny, on rewatch I was like, ooh, I don't know how this is gonna go.
It came out in 2001, and it definitely came out in 2001. This movie does not know which decade it wants to exist.
It's so different. I want to be clear, it's so different than this, but it gave me Swordfish energy. Do you remember Swordfish?
Yeah, that's another one.
Right, like that is so 2001. So anyway, we'll get there. But yeah, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be a conversation. All right. In the meantime, follow us on our socials. We drink and we watch things on Instagram. Got a lot of reels there. Mackenzie just had like some Oscar content last month. Go rewatch those. And yeah, that's where we're doing most of our communication these days. So, DM us or throw some comments on there. We can read some during the next episodes and whatnot. But yeah, interact. We'd appreciate it. Like, subscribe, participate. We love you. All right. For now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.